Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There, a weekly video stream and podcast that is currently focused on Marvel's What If animated series, which is available to watch on Disney+. In today's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around episodes 2 and 3. So that's episode 2, What If T'Challa became Star-Lord, and episode 3, What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes. We are also going to probably spoil other Marvel properties while we talk about this, including the movies and TV shows within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so be warned. My name's Keith Isles. I am an independent filmmaker, content creator, and lifetime enthusiast of cinema, television, and related media. And joining me tonight, I have some Avengers and from both sides of the Atlantic. What if they are on the line to join us? Well, fortunately they are. To start with, my co-host and the co-creator of the Let's See What's Out There podcast, from New York, we're joined by Pete Mealy.
Hey, what if I was on this show?
How you doing? Yeah, what if you weren't? What if you weren't? We just keep asking ourselves these weird what if questions. And of course, we're obviously, back because we missed last week because life got in the way for all of us. And so we're doing a double episode, obviously episode 2. But also we're bang up to date because episode 3, we're certainly here in the UK, just dropped today. So we're relatively current for once, which is nice. Also joining us from London, we have filmmaker and comic book fan, Clive Ashenden. Welcome, Clive.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Looking forward to our own sort of mashed up what if,
exactly.
where we're combining the two episodes to create a new scenario, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's what if we didn't do an episode last week, which we didn't. So what if we did 2 episodes together, which might not have happened in another universe, but is happening in this one. Now, unfortunately, our other regular co-host, Claire Bueno, can't make it today. So we are a team of just the 3 of us today. Just the 3 of us. So we will try our best to go through this and see if we can unravel these episodes. If you are new to the channel, by the way, or the podcast, welcome. Please do, if you like this sort of thing, like the video, consider subscribing to the channel and checking out some of the other work. We have previously done this kind of stream, whether it's live or a video stream on the other Marvel series. So we started with WandaVision. We also did Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki. So we've covered those shows. We've also done audio podcasts covering Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and Star Wars The Mandalorian. So if that's your kind of jelly, check that out. We've also had streams on other film and TV related subjects, and there are videos that cover home media, unboxings, reviews, etc. So, please, if you're here, have a look around the channel and feel free to comment and get involved. We're all for that. We're just glad to have an audience at all. So that being said, what we normally do now is we just do a very quick synopsis of this week's episode, or these episodes in this case, which is normally Pete's department. So Pete, I'll hand over to you.
Okay. Episode 2. So, like, what if instead of picking up Peter Quill, the Ravagers accidentally picked up Chala, who then grows up in space and is like totally awesome, and he thinks that the Earth gets destroyed, but it doesn't really. Anyway, he goes around being awesome with the Ravagers, totally turns them around, and even gets Thanos to give up looking for the Infinity Stones. But then that means that the Collector ends up way more powerful and then Chala and Thanos and all the other Ravagers have to get together and defeat the Collector, which then means that Chala finds out that Earth is not destroyed and that his parents really want him back. And so he goes back and everybody's happy. And it's pretty cool. Okay. And then episode 3, so like, what if Tony Stark died in Iron Man 2, Thor and Hawkeye died in Thor 1, and then Black Widow sort of dies in Hulk, and so does Hulk. I don't know, that timing got weird in there, but it's the Ed Norton Hulk and not the other Hulks. And then Loki shows up and he's all angry because everyone's dead, and Fury is like, uh-oh. And then everyone finds out that it's Hank Pym who's killing people because Fury originally recruited Hope before even like Iron Man 1. I don't know, that timing's really weird too. And then she died, but now Loki's there, and so Loki stops Hank Pym, who's in like the Wasp costume thing. And then that means that the only Avengers that are left are Captain America and Captain Marvel. And I guess they start over? I don't know. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, well done, Pete. That was quite a lot to unpack there, wasn't it?
Yeah, nicely done. Nicely done.
Done. And even though these are like only, 30-minute episodes, they do indeed, pack quite a lot of information into each episode. So quite a lot to go through there. Just as we always do, just a quick look at the credits for this. So these episodes, episode 2 was in fact written by Matthew Chauncey, and episode 1 was written by episode 3 was written by the lead writer and showrunner AC Bradley. So we've talked a little bit about her work on another episode. Matthew Chauncey, I looked at his credits and it doesn't look like before What If he was involved in 3 Below Tales of Arcadia as writing a number of those episodes, and then straight into What If. So not a lot I can unpack in terms of their backgrounds, but very good contributions all the same. So let's get intimate, bring the screens in a little bit, because it's only the 3 of us. So before we sort of dig into details on these, I guess it's probably best to deal with an episode at a time, but just sort of broad thoughts on What If. How are your thoughts on this so far? I mean, if it was What If you could do something else, would you? Or are you enjoying watching this? So Clive, let's start with you.
Okay, I am enjoying watching this. I'm finding it a lot of fun. The first episode I enjoyed, but it seemed sort of very safe, if you see what I mean. Narratively, it was there was basically Captain America, the first Avenger, just with a twist. Yes. So we did get a bit beyond that, but it was like most of the episode was like your favorite scenes from Captain America, the first Avenger, with a twist. Mm-hmm. And now it's nice to see them sort of just spreading their wings a little bit and going beyond that kind of like, you remember this bit from this movie? Well, it's gone slightly differently this time.
Yeah.
So, particularly in episode 2 with Chala, and because they've gone so radically different with the timeline. You know, obviously we do get the kind of, you know, the sort of recreation of that initial scene where Star-Lord is stealing the MacGuffin that I can't remember the name of.
It's an Infinity Stone.
Oh, that one, yeah. So you know, and this time it goes differently, which is very amusing. And then we go back to and we visit the curator, and it's collector, and it's all we get those moments, but then we get all these other bits and pieces which are nice, I think, and and then episode 3, different flavor because it's a real mystery. It's almost like What If does Watchmen. You know, it's like someone's killing masks, right? Yes. Only not quite as dark as that, you know. But so it was nice. Although the moment, you know, there was like a real sort of telltale, like pointing the finger towards the culprit, like about halfway through, which slightly took away from the mystery. But yeah, it did keep me kind of intrigued. So I'm anyway, that's a long way of saying I'm finding them fun. You know, what would I do differently? I think I would maybe vary the animation style a little bit. I get it, they've gone for a house style throughout all the different episodes, and that's one way to do it. I think maybe I would have preferred more of like a Love, Death and Robots. Is that the name of the series?
Yeah.
That sort of a you know, thing where you've got like almost different animation people like let loose on it each week. I think that could be really fun. But
it's a little bit like they did with the Animatrix back when that was out.
Yes,
as well.
that's another good example. Yeah.
So, I mean, they have kind of gone with a slightly stylized look to this, but they are being sort of quite faithful to the likeness of the actors that are playing the roles as well.
Unless your name's Ed Norton, right?
Well, we'll talk about that later because I've got some thoughts on that actually, but we'll save that for later. Of course, the other thing is, as you absolutely correctly mentioned, is you know after the first episode with Captain Carter instead of Captain America, you know, in these other episodes we've sort of felt more of the butterfly effect, if you like, with the you know, one thing changes and it has sort of massive implications on everything else, but likewise people do still sort of find themselves on a similar path sometimes to what they were on before, or doing similar things. The other thing they've done very nicely with this, which of course is for the fans, is they've got plenty of iconography and references to the you know, the films and the other work in there, which you know, it really is sort of Easter egg city, isn't it? But the fact that you're saying it's fun, I think really does sort of sum it up, because I think that's all this is really intended to be, is a little bit of fun. You know, to keep us subscribed to Disney Plus, Frank. I don't know, Pete. What are your broad thoughts on this?
So I think broadly, it's a little bit of fun, and they are. I know I said this last week. I don't want to sound too much like a broken record, but I think they're slowly trying to pry bar us away from specific actors and specific roles. You know, and so changing Captain America was one step, changing Star-Lord was another step, and then, you know, subtly I think having different actors do voices is like step 3. I didn't even notice that it wasn't Robert Downey Jr. as the voice of Iron Man in this one. In episode 3, I looked it up.
We're supposed to either. I think that's exactly the point. Is we're supposed to really buy into the fact that these are, you know, the same characters, the same people, And obviously they've gone to great lengths wherever they can to get the original actors back, with exceptions. And it is quite, I actually find that quite a fascinating part of the whole show, actually, of who they do and don't manage to get. And obviously we know that people's schedules and all sorts of things sort of factor into that, and where they are geographically, etc. But yeah, so anyway, sorry, I feel like I interrupted you. Carry on.
No. And like, also, like, let's keep in mind that, Chadwick Boseman was the voice of T'Challa in this, right? So that means that they recorded this not even pre-pandemic, right? Because he died pre-pandemic. So like, it was a while ago.
Yes.
That they put that together. I'm super impressed with the voice acting. But yeah, I think, broadly the idea of this show is like, hey, have a little bit of fun and step back from what you know of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let's start letting it go.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I must admit, I did like the fact that they dedicated that episode to Chadwick Boseman. It was fantastic that he was able to, it's both respectful and great that they didn't sort of cast or recast the voice in this particular instance. And it's obviously really great that he managed to to record this. And what a sad loss to the acting community. But
we've got more Chadwick Boseman apparently in some smaller cameos in upcoming episodes, I believe. So that'd be brilliant. But I must confess, did get a bit dusty in the room when I was watching this one. At the end, it is, when he comes home and then you get the dedication at the end, it is, it's, if they planned this right to be a dedication, they couldn't have written a better one, because it's basically how awesome is T'Challa, right? That's the story.
Yes,
that's the whole story.
But I didn't really mind, I just found it a lot of fun. It's maybe a little bit harsh on Peter Quill, but that's part of the joke, isn't it? So
I was going to say that the thing's been harsh to Peter Quill from the start, really, because let's be honest, James Gunn has had a lot of fun being harsh with that character. So it's not anything massively sort of off at a tangent. And talking of which, we've got obviously, yes, of course, T'Challa replaced Peter Quill as Star-Lord, and therefore, that had massive changes to the sort of lineup and the history of what happened with the Ravengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy, etc., which they had quite a lot of fun with. And of course, we saw a lot of different scenarios in episode 3 with those events of Iron Man 2, the Incredible Hulk, and Thor, all of which, it was always sort of implied that the events of those films were all sort of taking place at the same time, and this episode is absolutely confirmed that not only at the same time, but it's all kind of happening in the same week. So even though those films came out a year or two apart, I guess, but it all sort of condenses into that complex Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline, which I
didn't really like that, to be honest, because I just I didn't think that was accurate. Right, in terms of like Iron Man 2 happens on Tuesday, Thor 1 happens on Wednesday, and then Hulk is Thursday. And I was like, so that means that New York City got destroyed on Thursday or Friday, right? And Los Angeles got, doesn't his house get blown up in Iron Man 2? or is that 3? I don't remember.
That's 3 actually.
That's 3? Okay.
And the Avengers itself is a year or 2 after those events as well. But yeah, took him for a drink on Tuesday. I can hear a Craig David song in my head. I don't know why, but yeah. but yeah. Well, let's look at one episode at a time then. So let's start with episode 2. Obviously, we're a bit behind the curve here because, of course, that was last week now that came out. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it to a point. I'll be honest, had a couple of issues with it, which I'm sure you can put me right on. I just kind of had a bit of a, I don't know. The bit I had a real problem buying was the Thanos situation. I mean, it's great that they got Josh Brolin back to voice him again, from the movies. Nice bit of continuity, etc. But I thought, whoa, this is a stretch. So T'Challa talked him out of doing the snap. Is that right?
Yeah.
And wiping out half the universe. It was
T'Challa talked him out of even looking for the stones.
Yeah. I don't know. I much as I liked, the fact that we got T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman and whatever back in that episode, and I liked a lot of the references, and again, they got a lot of the voice actors back, which was great. But in terms of the actual storyline, yeah, it didn't. I know it's, as the name suggests, a what if, and not to be taken too seriously, but I don't know quite how I felt about the Thanos thing. To me, it kind of reduced the threat that Thanos was in the Infinity Saga. And maybe that's me just taking science fiction way too seriously. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, for me, that was kind of the point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because a lot of these things, you have to kind of take the status quo of the story as the status quo of the story. If you don't buy into that, you're not going to be on board, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. And so we're told, basically this has happened before. This has happened before. So this is the way. This is how it's gone down, and we have to kind of you just to mentally headcanon an explanation that works for you as to, there must have been more to it than he just had a chat with him, right? There's like a whole other story. They just don't have time to go into it.
Yeah,
that's how I work with that. I did quite like the sort of.
Otherwise, Black Panther could have just talked to him earlier in the Infinity Saga and sorted it, right?
Well, actually, so I have thoughts on that.
Good. This is the point.
Yeah. So actually, I went back and thought through the Infinity Saga, and Black Panther is like an afterthought to the Infinity Saga, right? Like Wakanda shows up at the very end as a home base. But I don't think, Black Panther is like, that's not the, sorry, whatever. Black Panther is such a minuscule part of it, right? They go to Wakanda at the end of Infinity War as a home base. T'Challa gets snapped, right? Like he's not really a big part of it. And I think that reinforces the theme in Black Panther, the movie itself, about, sharing or being out in the world, right? And so the Black Panther in Prime Universe, or whatever you want to call it, never really interacted with Thanos. But then again, Wakanda was a hidden, secluded unit for most of that time, right? So that sort of makes sense. Like there was no way for T'Challa to connect with Thanos to stop it in Prime Universe, because of the internal Wakandan politics.
Mhm.
Is that the nerdiest thing that's ever been said in the world? I don't know, but that's sort of where I'm at. Is that like I was like, oh, that actually makes sense with like MCU continuity, right? Is
Yeah,
that at that time he wouldn't have been involved. He's not involved in any of the sort of preamble like Avengers 1, Battle for New York, or
Mhm.
any of the other Thanos preamble stuff. And so if you do this thing where 30 years ago you throw him right into the mix of Thanos, it makes sense to me. Sure. Do I think it's like slightly hero worship, right? And maybe they are being exceedingly kind to someone who died early. Maybe, right? Yeah, but then again, that's also, I think, part of the idea for this series. You're supposed to play with it, and it's quick, it's easy, it's 30 minutes. They're not spending a ton of time digging into it because they're just rolling sort of, it's like spitballing with your friends.
Yep. No, I think both of you there have rather easily sold that to me, but yeah, makes sense. I mean, it was a thought I had while I was watching it, and I was like, meh, for a second there, but then I soon forgot about it and just started to enjoy the episode and some of the other crossover characters that we had show up and just the different paths that they all went on, but sort of doing some of the same things as well. I thought it was quite fun as far as that was concerned. Apparently as well, there were a lot of Easter eggs, not only for other MCU bits and pieces, but when they go to the collectors area, the whole Howard the Duck thing and all of this. Apparently, some of the ships that were in there weren't just from the MCU, but apparently there were some from Star Wars as well. There was apparently an X-wing and a TIE fighter in there somewhere.
Yes, even though they were told not to play with those toys, they just snuck them in there.
Exactly,
as a little Easter egg. But hey, there's been Marvel Star Wars comics. That's what I say.
Yeah. We like Easter eggs. It's all fine.
We do.
I have a Doctor Who meets the cast of TNG comic book somewhere.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
The Cybermen and the Borg are the same. Yeah. I'm aware of that one. But that to me does sound a bit blasphemous. But hey, that's a whole nother stream, right?
Yeah. And if Ghostbusters taught us anything, it's don't cross the streams.
Exactly.
There we go.
Yes, it'd be exceedingly bad.
Absolutely. Any other sort of this one is not so fresh in my mind because I seem to forget.
I mean, it's funny talking about it. It just sort of is bringing things up in my mind, which is good, I guess. But I did like the extra wrinkle that it gave to T'Challa's character. This idea that he was this that maybe this was his best life, if you see what I mean. That he was a frustrated explorer, that being like the prince of Wakanda had restricted him in some way. He had to follow he was stuck in a particular path, because he was the anointed one, right? And it's not that he didn't do great things as Black Panther, but until the interaction with the world, until the world kind of like intervened, and his father was tragically killed, then Wakanda just kind of stayed within itself. But in here, this kind of like natural curiosity and natural like wanting to go out into the world part that we see in the young T'Challa basically gets to blossom. And I thought that was really interesting because we'd never seen that side of him before. And I think you could see that Chadwick Boseman kind of enjoyed playing with that a bit. And you know, you could argue that it's like the idea that he's so incredibly awesome that he turns all the Ravagers into kind of Robin Hoods is a bit of a stretch. But you know, I think we've established in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 that Yondu is basically a bit of a softie underneath everything. So
yeah.
So I think that's fair enough, you know. And you know, there's, like you say, there's lots of kind of fun stuff here. The sort of less bitter version of Nebula we see, you know, where she's less enhanced. She's kind of a bit more like a sort of a femme fatale character. There's sort of, I mean, I know what you're saying, Keith, about it kind of downgrading the threat of the character, but the running Thanos joke about, I still think it would have worked, the snap, you know, I don't think, you know, and people saying, isn't that genocide though? You know, that I did enjoy that. And yeah, there's lots of kind of little fun Easter eggy bits, you know, and just sort of geek things like T'Challa meets Howard the Duck, you know, it's just full of stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, it was fun and you know, a bit emotional at the end. So there we go.
No, absolutely. What did we think about the whole Howard the Duck thing? I mean, obviously, he's made very brief appearances in Guardians of the Galaxy and also stepping through the portals in Avengers Endgame. But this is probably the most we've seen of Howard the Duck in the MCU. I mean, kind of a ridiculous character. But what do we think of that stuff?
Yeah, did you guys see that movie from the 80s?
Yes.
Oh yes.
That was a weird movie.
That was super weird.
I saw that movie when it came out, and like I feel like it messed me up, right? Like I still remember the scene in the truck where like the guy opens his mouth and the thing comes out of his mouth. Remember that? Or am I being nuts? Anyway.
No. Yeah. It's a messed up movie, that's for sure.
It's messed up. And so for me, like Howard the Duck always has this thing where I'm like, oh, like that's the stove that burned me when I was a child. Right? Like I'm always like, oh, that's a little weird. And so I don't know. I don't get it. Like I know people love it and people think it's hilarious and awesome, but I am still very reserved and cautious. And so I think great, like, you know, Howard the Duck obviously was a big thing for James Gunn, right? And he fought to get it in Guardians of the Galaxy, and now it's crowbarred in there. And okay, but it's weird. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's weird. I must admit, I'm aware of the film and I remember the film, but I've not seen the film for years. So
I only saw it in the 80s, and I still remember that scene.
Yeah, there's quite a few things that would be deemed problematic, I think, under a modern day microscope. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. What about you, Clive? Thoughts on Howard the Duck?
I must confess, I'm not that familiar with the kind of comics iteration, right? And I think this was about, you know, initially it was about James Gunn being a fan of that iteration of the character. You know, I know there's like a big like hardcore following for those comics for that character, and that version of that character, not the one who's flirting with Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
You know, much though. You know, much so there's fun to be had in that movie.
Yeah, can't hold that.
But yeah, so you know, it's kind of like, oh, that's nice, you know, but it's not a reference that connects with me personally because I'm not attached to that character in the way that, say, weirdly, you know, I was quite invested in in seeing Taskmaster appear in the Black Widow film, because I loved Taskmaster from the comics, and so I was quite excited to see that happen, even though this is a very different version, without going into spoilers. So yeah,
that's a different stream.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, there are certain characters that you're like, oh wow, cool, we finally get to see that person, and everyone's got those kind of little side characters, or ones that aren't in the sort of like the big titles, that they're like, oh, I really wish they'd do a film with this, or we'd see this character, and what would be great if Spider-Man met this person, or if Hulk teamed up with this character, right? Yeah. So, and hopefully, we'll get more of those sort of, characters where we haven't met them yet. I would love that, Obviously, in this case, we had, it's just sort of like a callback, really, isn't it? But it's fun, yeah.
Sure. By the way, if anybody is watching or listening to this, and some of these other things that we mention and we say, that is like a different stream or whatever, if you do want us to talk about, there's a particular film in the MCU or something else that we mention, please put that down in the comments, because we are sort of open to these things and always looking for an excuse to talk about stuff like, Black Widow, for example, I've always been looking for an excuse to talk about that movie. So, if that's something you want to see, put it in the comments, and we'll see what we can arrange. But as a bit of a side there, so sorry to take us off track, but I thought I'd mention that.
It was time for the mid-roll break, the ad break.
The ad break, yeah. Absolutely. So any other anything in particular that you want to bring up about episode 2?
I think I've said my notes. I've run through them.
I did like the fact that he named the ship Mandela, after Nelson Mandela, whereas Peter Quill named it, what was it, Milano, after Alyssa Milano? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, yeah, quite amusing, but yeah. All right. Well, I'm feeling like there's something big that we haven't. Oh, I mean, there is
episode 3.
Oh. Well, no, but before we get on, there is the fact that again.
The sort of end sting part of it, where we get to see Ego.
Exactly, voiced by Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Again, amazing. For just a few lines, but.
And Peter Quill was not voiced by Chris Pratt.
Right. Yeah. I do, as I said. It is quite interesting how how some actors have come back and some haven't, and you just sort of wonder what the reasons are behind it, whether it's just down to scheduling or whether it's down to other things. You do wonder sometimes, yeah. But I think overall it looks to me like this show, they have made the effort wherever possible to get the original actor back to voice the character wherever possible, regardless of how big or small the role is in the episode. And of course, yes, there are exceptions where this hasn't been possible, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But so anything that's kind of, itching at you that you want to say about episode 2 before we sort of move into episode 3?
No, I mean, just that I think I'd said it on episode 1 that I felt like some of the voice acting in episode 1 was a little bit mixed. Mm-hmm. But I felt on episode 2, even though it was the same sort of approach, right? Get the actors back to do their thing, and with only like getting a voice actor in where you actually had to. It's I don't know whether it's just getting used to it, or whether the actors in this particular one were just better at the voice acting overall. Right. If you see what I mean, because it didn't sort of kick with me in the same way that the first one did. So that was the only thing I wanted to mention, was that I thought they were all good, which is what you want, right?
Yeah. I couldn't. There was nothing that really kind of particularly bothered me with the delivery in this one. So cool. Okay. Well, in that case, let's move on then to what if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Again, directed by Brian Andrews, as all of these episodes appear to be, and this one co-written by AC Bradley and Matthew Chauncey. Who wants to start? Quite a lot to unpack in this one, I feel.
Yeah, I think the big thing that this episode changes is that the first two episodes were very sort of like easy softballs. That's the word. Softballs, right? And it's in the title, right? Where what if Peggy Carter was the first Avenger? What if T'Challa got taken instead of Peter Quill? And in this one, actually, like the branching point is more like, what if Nick Fury recruited Hope Pym to be a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. before everyone else, right? And they don't have time for that hour of story in this, and so they set it up like a mystery, because really, like, what changed this timeline to the other ones is that Hope Pym dies as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent before everything else.
Yeah.
But I do think that so like that's like a radical change, and I think that's fun. I'd like to see more of that coming down the line. Is like huge, like let's go big with what's different, and what are the ripple effects that has. I do think sort of like the mystery behind this one of how are these people dying is ridiculous, right? Like I was like, it's Ant-Man. I've seen these movies, right? I know what happens. It was Ant-Man, and so like that was like I feel like the mystery side of it, where they're like hunting, sort of fell flat. It wasn't the best delivery. But again, I don't think the point of this episode was to be a mystery. It's just sort of how they told the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this was a lot. This was even more referencey, wasn't it, to what we've seen before? To the point that, again, like they did in episode 1, they actually recreated some of the scenes that we've seen in live action in animation, and essentially redid the scene, and then something different would happen partway through it. But yeah, and again, a massive amount of the voice actors, from the movies turning up in this to reprise their roles once again. I must admit, if you're lucky enough to be an actor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or any of these big franchises, actually, you are kind of set up for some years ahead, aren't you? So it was great that again, some of them came back. There are a couple of exceptions with this, though, as you'd already mentioned, Pete. The voice of Tony Stark in this is actually voiced by Mick Wingert, and a little bit of trivia there. Mick actually voiced Tony Stark and Iron Man in the previous cartoon series from the I guess from the 80s. So it's quite cool that he's the go-to person when Robert Downey Jr. wasn't available to come and voice Iron Man again, which was quite cool. And then we've got actress Lake Bell standing in for Scarlett Johansson, doing Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow's voice for this episode. Any sort of thoughts again regarding voice cast on this? I'm sure this is going to be quite a recurring talky topic for us on these what if episodes, but I don't know, any sort of initial things that you guys want to hit on?
I think to Clive's earlier point, right, where like a lot of these actors that they're getting to fill in are voice actors. Lake Bell was the one who surprised me, just because I think she's a known name from live action, right? Like,
that's right.
Versus, not so much of a voice actor, but I'd recognize her face as well as her name. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a really interesting casting choice. And then also that the voice still, it feels like she modeled her voice on Scarlett Johansson too, right? Because it felt very similar. It didn't feel like a totally new person.
Yes, which I'm sure that's what the main direction is here. They're trying to be sort of voice alikes, right? Yeah. Which for me is very important that they are, but that's just a weird Keith thing. But I thought these guys did a good job. It did initially. I thought, oh, that's not Scarlett straight away, but that's not to say that Lake did a bad job. I think that it still felt like the character. I don't know. Clive, have you got any sort of big broad thoughts on the voice casting here?
There was only one of them where, generally I thought, the people standing in did a good job. There was only one where it sort of stuck out to me, but I'm not sure whether that's just because of the general cognitive dissonance of seeing the stuff to do with the Incredible Hulk and what they did there, because it's like we're starting to get into some sort of Stalinist, sort of like retconning of history here, aren't we? Where we're painting out the person in the and it's like, Ed Norton was never in the Incredible Hulk. It was always, your man here. It's like
Mark Ruffalo,
yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, but it was just like seeing Mark Ruffalo or seeing his Bruce Banner together with Betty Ross. And then hearing Betty Ross being voiced by Stephanie Panicello.
That's correct.
Yeah. And it's been a while since I've watched The Incredible Hulk. I don't dislike the movie. It's just been a while. So I was like, is that what she sounds like in the movie? But I don't know whether it was just, but I think a lot of that was just because of, I was a bit thrown by, suddenly seeing the Mark Ruffalo in there, right? And it's just sort of just felt odd. But then, there were various sort of things that this episode did, which were a bit cheaty. I didn't mind them in the flow of it, but it was like you just had to kind of like take it and go, okay, I guess Hank Pym found out a way to kill the Hulk then, and stuff like that. So he just had a magic thing he could put inside him to make him swell up.
He had Andy thing to his heart.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't necessarily read what he did there and that made all his muscles get really, really big.
Okay. Yeah, like he blew him up from the inside, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty, wasn't it? Yeah, I've got kind of sort of weird thoughts on this, because one of the things I did sort of think when I looked at the likeness that they used for Bruce Banner in this is I felt like the artwork kind of straddled the lines slightly, and I felt like what we got here, like in that top left picture that I've got there, to me kind of felt like a little bit of a hybrid look between Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo. You know, one of my kind of problems all along with the sort of change of actor there was even though, you know, I love them both as actors, by the way, but they are, as you can see from the picture of them side by side there, very, very different physical types. You know, they're very. I mean, I can't sort of squint and buy that they're the same person. You know, like I can. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of an example. Katie Holmes and Maggie Gyllenhaal. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job of making that look as if it was the same person, even though we know it wasn't. Yeah. But you know, in the case of this, I sort of always felt that it was a massively different jump, apart from the fact that they're both white males, you know, of a certain age group, you know. but you know, obviously, clearly, it was Ruffalo's voice here. But one of the things they did in this, which again was kind of, I found very interesting, was one of the things that when they changed over to Mark Ruffalo, one of my little nitpicks with the Avengers, and this is very geeky, was the fact that in the Incredible Hulk, as the trigger before the transformation, the metamorphosis begins, they took essentially from the TV show, the 70s TV show, the fact that the eyes would change first, and that would be the trigger, and then he would change into the Hulk. And obviously, when Mark Ruffalo took over in the Avengers, they seemed to scrub that, and I always thought that was a bit of a odd choice. I don't know whether it was something to do with the universal ownership, and whether, you know, it had to be slightly different because of that, because obviously that was a Kenneth Johnson thing from the TV show. But what I noticed in this is they did use the eyes as the trigger when they sort of recreate that scene where he's on the walkway that overlooks, and all the tanks come up and everything, and when he gets shot, the first thing when Natasha crouches down by him is he opens his eye and it turns green and the transformation begins. So again, so it's kind of weird. I sort of feel like they did try and straddle the line a little bit here, not to completely negate the Incredible Hulk and what had happened, but to try and sort of be similar enough, but make it obvious that it's Mark Ruffalo's Hulk as well. Does any of this make sense, or am I rambling nonsense?
Honestly, I didn't agree with you, but as you talked it through, I sort of came around to straddling the line, because for me, it was definitely Mark Ruffalo's Hulk when I was watching it. And if I was Ed Norton, I'd be annoyed. But now that you've sort of talked it through, I'm like, oh, I see your point there. They did blend it more than I noticed originally. And I think it's more about the mindset that you bring to it, which is awesome.
No, I mean, it is clearly supposed to be Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, I think. I mean, he voiced it. I'm not kind of denying that, but I just thought the way they handled it was I just thought, because obviously we're talking about something that's in animation anyway here, but I felt that there was a bit of compromise. But as I said, maybe that's just sort of wish fulfillment on my part, because I'm actually one of those few fans that is or one of those few people that is a big fan of the Incredible Hulk. and I really liked Ed Norton's portrayal of Bruce Banner as well. Although I totally appreciate from a Marvel, perspective, he was probably quite difficult to work with creatively because he's got a different sensibility to what the Marvel model is, if you like, with these films and shows. So I appreciate and of course I love Mark Ruffalo as well. I think he's a fine actor, but yeah. We've probably done this bit to death, but I did find it interesting. The other little Easter egg I did like in this was when Natasha jumps out of the window, she does her land.
She does the move
thing, which of course is the thing that Florence Pugh's character, makes fun of her at in the Black Widow film. So I kind of like that little touch as well. So yeah. But Clive, back to your sort of point on this then. So you did you say you felt in some respects it was a little bit like dodgy ground, that they were being maybe a little bit disrespectful to Edward Norton's work?
Yeah, justice for Norton. That's what I'm saying. It's weird what kicks you out of it, because I don't know that I would have the same reaction that if I saw, like Don Cheadle's War Machine in Iron Man, like in animated form, if you see what I mean. And I think it's because of the Betty Ross connection. It just because in my mind they because obviously in The Incredible Hulk, like, she's the love of his life. There's this big soulmate connection there. And then in all the subsequent MCU films, we've never seen her. She's never been mentioned. And to the point where, Bruce Banner's had, this kind of sort of hinted, sort of burgeoning relationship with Black Widow, right?
Yes.
So then to suddenly rewind and go, oh, actually, the Mark Ruffalo character was together with this, with Betty Ross. It's like, that I think that's what it was. It just felt a little bit like, oh, okay, I guess. I know why they've done it. It's just purely a personal reaction. It was just kind of like a gut, kind of like, oh, okay, right, okay. I mean. But also because I think maybe it's because this is a multiversal thing, and right, and I don't, and why in this other like parallel universe, essentially what we're talking about, this branch line, why in this other one we couldn't have, Bruce Banner looked like Ed Norton, right? I mean, that's entirely possible.
I think that was one of my when we were covering the Loki episodes, and that was actually one of my slides and points, was that Ed Norton, Terrence Howard, etc. could all that's how they could have been in that particular branch or whatever, which is obviously ridiculous, not fan nonsense, but
it is. I mean, it's no more nonsense than saying, well, of course, it's the effects of the gamma radiation and Bruce Banner's attempt to cure himself has led him to not cure himself from being the Incredible Hulk, but to transform himself physically from looking like Ed Norton to looking like Mark Ruffalo.
Yes.
Or because he was in hiding and trying not to get caught by the authorities, he's had plastic surgery to look like Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
I think about these things. What can I say? It's a bit sad.
Wow, Clive.
Right?
That's. God, I thought I was nerdy, but that's a whole new level. I like it though. I do like.
Does that mean that Eric Bana had surgery to look like Ed Norton and then had surgery again?
That's a different timeline.
Okay.
That's a different multiverse. But of course, and you're absolutely right.
Wait, that's not a different timeline.
Yeah. Ang Lee's Hulk is a different film.
Yeah, but I thought they carried it through in Incredible.
No, it's not. It was never part of the MCU. Basically, the only thing they did do was they kind of picked up the story of the Incredible Hulk, sort of loosely as a from where the Eric Bana film, the Ang Lee film.
They picked it up from where Eric Bana left off.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It's not supposed to be connected. I don't think. I mean, do you really want a giant poodle in the MCU?
Yes.
But I wanted an animated scene where Mark Ruffalo's Hulk stared at some moss for a bit. That's what I wanted. But we can't always get what we want, can we?
Anything to get Nick Nolte back into the MCU.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
But again, back to your point about Betty Ross, and obviously, Liv Tyler played her in the film. We got Stephanie Panisello voicing her here. But even though you're right, she's never been mentioned since. But of course, General Ross has been, a massive part of the MCU. With multiple appearances since the Incredible Hulk. In this, he's obviously voiced by Mike McGill, so they didn't get. Sorry, I'm blanking.
William Hurt.
William Hurt.
Yeah.
They didn't get William Hurt back this time, but he has obviously reprised the role in several of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Over the years. But yeah, you're right. The Incredible Hulk the whole Bruce Banner thing is probably the biggest change that. Okay, you've got the War Machine thing as well, haven't you? But yeah, it's messy. What can we say? Okay, but there's obviously loads of other stuff in this episode to unpack. Any particular thoughts on the fact that let's talk about Loki. So we've got Loki back in this episode, again voiced by Tom Hiddleston, who sounded like he was having a really good time with it. Actually, it kind of I don't know, something came out that he was clearly loving it, I think. But any sort of thoughts on that strand and the changes they made to the we've talked about the changes they've made to the Hulk movie, but obviously there's big changes here to Thor and to the other film. God, what is wrong with me? I'm completely sorry. I've completely lost the plot. I think I'm still distracted by the eyes for Bruce Banner when he changes, and I always bothered me when Ruffalo took over that Marvel decided not to use that trigger mechanism moving forward, and I've always wondered why. But there you go. Anyway, sorry. So please, guys, any other thoughts?
I think I mentioned it briefly already in our sort of sum ups, but I think they played really crazy with the timeline on this, which sort of took me out of it. Going back to your point on Loki, right? I thought the whole Loki thing at the UN was I was like, wow, this could be its own episode here, right? Like digging into what's going on here and what's happening. And then I feel like instead they just sort of ran past it. And so, cramped in a ways that I think the other two episodes did not feel cramped.
Right.
The spacing, the timing, it felt like maybe they bit more than they wanted to out of this one.
Okay, no, I think that's fair. Clive, any sort of thoughts about that?
Yeah, I've got a number of things I want to hit on, but I'll just start by following up on what Pete said there, which is that it's this because they had this, because they were following this kind of this mystery angle all the way through.
Mhm.
What that did was, and they wanted to kind of have this ticking clock of like the murderers tracking down the Avengers one by one. So that meant they had to play pretty fast and loose with the timeline. They had to kind of like propulsively kind of keep moving forward. So things that you could have taken like a whole episode on, because they will have like big effects. It's like if you kill Tony Stark, you're not just killing a member of the Avengers, you're killing like the head of Stark Industries, you're killing like someone who is like a global figure, right? So that would have its own ripple effects. And I felt like there were all these things happening which would have all these ripples, and we were just kind of only getting like a narrow window on what was actually on what they were all doing, if you see what I mean. Because you know, like Pete said, they kind of bit off more than they could chew, because they were kind of like, it was like one thing after another. You know, Hope Pym is dead. You know, Hope Van Dyne is dead. You know, and then, you know, then it's like one Avenger, two Avenger, three Avenger. You know, and then we're going through and we're just killing them off. Mm-hmm. And you know, that gives it a certain propulsion, and the speed meant that maybe some people didn't get the, you know, didn't realize who it was, if you saw what I mean, even though there were some big clues like going through. So yeah, I sort of felt like in some ways they sort of, it was a missed opportunity, but at the same time I enjoyed it as it was going through. Mm-hmm. And just on a sort of comic book point of view, like, you know, this is probably a spoiler one, so, you know, the murderer is Hank Pym, right?
Yes.
But I liked that it was Hank Pym in the Yellow Jacket costume.
Because, right, I was going to ask you about this. Okay, yeah.
Well, you know, I wouldn't call myself like an expert on Ant-Man and all of his interactions, whether it's part of the Avengers or just, you know, solo, or, you know, all of his timeline. But I do know that his character has been a bit volatile, shall we say?
Okay.
If you see what I mean, and all the experimenting he's done on himself,
right,
has taken a toll, and he has because he's, you know, partly because, and this is, we see this with him kind of taking up all these different names throughout his career, whether it's Ant-Man, Giant Man, Yellow Jacket.
Yeah.
And there is I think I'm getting this right, there was like an ongoing thing where he took on the Yellow Jacket persona, and it became like a sort of split personality. He kind of lost his mind and went bad. I mean, there's been a few different stories where Hank Pym has gone bad.
Okay, I'm really glad you've hit on, because one of the things that I guess pulled me out of the episode, and I had a little bit of a problem with to start with, is well, first of all, the cool thing is they got Michael Douglas back to voice this, which is, you know, again, pretty amazing that they got him back to be Hank Pym in this, and carry on the continuity from the films. But my question was, and you've kind of answered it a little bit there, is I was like, but isn't Hank Pym a good guy? You know, is this not out of character, you know, massively for him to you know, go and essentially be a serial killer and you know, do this out of revenge and all of this sort of stuff. But from what you're saying there, it sounds like this is something that they've explored and played with in the comic medium as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you've not been exposed to that side of that character, then it is going to seem a bit odd, you know, and you just have to take it as like he's lost his family, and is like having this extreme grief reaction, and then you add into that like things we've already been party to, like he was quite bitter towards the Stark family for having sort of taken his tech, I believe. So you add all those that sort of simmering resentment that he's been pushed out by the scientific establishment, and then his wife is gone, his daughter's gone. What's he got left? But I mean, if you think about it too hard, it only really works if he's kind of lost his mind. Because, why would he particularly be anti-Avenger rather than just anti-Shield? And I mean, I kept thinking, because we kept seeing because obviously we see like the Frank Grillo character, Crossbones, or whatever his agent name is, right before he's unmasked or masked, I thought there was going to be like a high, but I think that was kind of like a deliberate red herring, that we might think maybe Hydra had something to do with it, but apparently not. It was Hank all along, but without the song,
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, I thought that was it was good, but I did sort of question that slightly, and I don't think we're supposed to read too much into these or intellectualize these things too much, because I think, as we summed up at the beginning, they are supposed to just be a bit of fun, a bit of what if fun, right? But Pete, have you got any thoughts on the sort of Hank Pym being the villain side of things?
I thought it kind of made sense. Like I said, it was sort of that's the what if, right? Is the Hank Pym storyline. They don't say that in the title because they want to preserve this mystery, I guess. But anyway, I thought it made a lot of sense that the Hank Pym in prime timeline sort of becomes a recluse. But if his daughter had been killed by S.H.I.E.L.D., then maybe he would have taken matters into his own hand. So I liked that it was the Yellow Jacket outfit from the movie. So it sort of like the backstory in my head was that he had teamed up with the guy from the movie, the bad guy from the movie whose name I can't remember now, who wanted to mass produce the Yellow Jacket. Yeah.
No, it was good. I enjoyed this one, I have to say. It's obviously great to have Agent Coulson back, voiced by Clark Gregg. His obsession seemed to go from Captain America to Thor now. His man crush, as it were. Here's a question I've got about the whole thing, and it's a question I've got because obviously every episode starts with the Watcher, voiced by Jeffrey Wright, doing the opening narration. But here's the question: do you think these shows, the individual episodes, are they supposed to be interconnected as well, or is each one a separate what if story? So what I mean is, for example, the events of Captain Carter, and Steve Rogers not being the first, or being the experimental super soldier as we saw in the first episode, is the conceit that, so the beginning of this, where we see those events that were happening in Hulk and Iron Man, Iron Man 2 and Hulk and Thor, has the world not got Steve Rogers as Captain America because it's Peggy Carter. Are they connected like that, or are these individual stories? I don't
No,
know.
it's got to be individual because the Captain America in episode 3 isn't Peggy Carter. It's the Capsicle, to use a term.
because it's exactly it's frozen.
Yeah.
Rather than like coming out of.
So each story is a separate what if. Then they're not connected what ifs.
I think that they dropped a couple of
where T'Challa is Star-Lord, and Peggy. Those are separate incidents. They're not.
I think that
timelines.
I think some of them you could potentially connect them up, and they've definitely left like these kind of little teasers, like they might come back to this story later. The sort of like the ego meeting up with Peter Quill when Peter Quill isn't Star-Lord, and the Watcher's like, oh, that went really badly, but we'll find out again later. Sorry, I don't know why I did that voice. It doesn't even sound like it.
It was awesome. No.
Yeah, it was good.
Nailed it.
Cast. If Jeffrey Wright doesn't want to come back, let's cast Clive.
That was my Watcher voice. I don't know that it was definitely Jeffrey Wright, the right voice, but anyway.
There's more than one. There's more than one Watcher, right?
This is true.
So
I mean, one thing I did like in episode 3, which I didn't notice in the other ones, maybe you guys can tell me if that was there, was that what they would cut into these kind of like wide shots, super wide shots, and you had like the figure of the Watcher with his eyes glowing, like just kind of in the background, always there. And I thought, oh, that's really nice. And I didn't notice that being
that in the previous,
in the other ones.
Yeah. I rewatched half of 2 looking for it after I saw it in 3, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's a shame because that would have been a nice ongoing aesthetic through the show. But I guess it's something they came up with, at this point. But I think that works. The other thing, I mean, just to sort of clarify as well, in Iron Man 2, when Nick Fury first tells Tony Stark about the Avengers Initiative, etc., they do have on the video screens events from the Incredible Hulk and Thor. So those things, were happening at the same time or around the same time. And I believe that there was one of those prequel tie-in comics that came out around the time that, or just before the Avengers was hitting the cinema, which was, it was called something like I don't know if this is the exact title, but it was something about Nick Fury's busiest week or something, and it was connecting those stories and those events of Iron Man 2, Thor, and the Incredible Hulk. So that is something that they have done. Okay. Any other, before we sort of wrap it up? Any other bits that you were like, oh, I definitely want to talk about that or mention that on an episode? Is there anything?
I did have one silly thought, which was just that, like they decided to go for this Ant-Man what if, but and maybe it's just because I saw like a piece of art like on the internet, it just brought up in my mind, but the fan theory about how Ant-Man could have stopped the snap.
Oh, right.
Have you heard this?
I can't say. No.
Well, the theory goes that the way we could have stopped Thanos, could have stopped the snap, was that Ant-Man would make himself very, very small, fly up Thanos' butt, and then make himself very big inside.
Wow.
So but I don't think you're going to get a Disney show do what if Ant-Man flew up that Thanos' butt and then exploded him from the inside.
Yeah. No, it's probably not a
probably not, but it was a theory I saw out there, as to how you would stop Thanos.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Interesting.
Sorry if I've just put some like horrible images in people's minds.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Is it?
It is. One other thing I thought about is again, I like the sort of, house style that we have with these shows, where you get the Marvel Studios logo at the beginning, with various tweaks or colors or whatever to match the show. And of course, that logo has changed and evolved over the years that they've been producing the movies. One thing I'm surprised they didn't do is I was surprised they didn't actually turn the shots in that logo to animation, a bit like they've done with that cracked glass image that we see. I don't know. Again, am I being a bit nitpicky there, or is that a missed opportunity?
Yeah,
nitpicky.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry.
Okay. No, it was just a thought I had as the episode was starting. But I thought, they could have done that in animation. That could have been quite interesting. But yeah. Anyway, whatever. They do the end bit when the logo says Marvel Studios, and it kind of turns into sort of a hand-drawn logo at that point, doesn't it? But cool. All right. Well, unless you've got any other things you want to say or theorize or anything, we'll start to bring this episode to a close, I guess. Anything else you want to add?
I think it's difficult to theorize with these ones because they are kind of like their own little, sort of parallel thing, aren't they? You can't. It's like, unlike with, say, like the other Marvel, shows we've had on Disney Plus. It's not like what's going to happen next week. Well, next week we're going to get a completely different standalone story, and that in itself is actually like quite a nice change of pace.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. No, definitely the other shows, being somewhat serialized, did open up, debate for theories, etc. But essentially with this, there are infinite possibilities, right? That's the whole point. So it does make theorizing somewhat difficult for sure. But okay, well, on that note, just want to say that myself and Clive, we're going to be attending a film festival in London this weekend, Fright Fest. So as a result, there will not be a regular Home Media Minefield episode, an unboxing or a review or anything out this week. This will be the only content this week on the channel. So I just want to say that. But Clive, if people want to find out more, where can they find more of your work?
They go to Vimeo and put in my name, Clive Ashenden. They will find my most recent work as a director.
Cool. And we will put some links to that down in the show notes as well. Pete, what about you?
You should check out Let's See What's Out There podcast on all fine podcasting apps, and follow us on social media, LSWOTcast at gmail.com, at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Lovely. Yeah, if you want to get in touch, please do, and check out those other episodes. And likewise, if you're already here, you found this channel, please check out the other work. We do home media reviews of Blu-rays, DVDs, 4K UHDs, etc. We do comparisons, explain videos, product unboxings, things of that nature. So if that's your sort of jelly, then please do consider subscribing and check out some of the other work there. Obviously, if you've got any suggestions or anything, please put that down in the comments as well. That we really do appreciate that. That all helps. If you want to check out any of my short films, I also have another YouTube channel called British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name. Again, links down below. But there are half a dozen short films there that I've written, produced, and directed. I'm in one of them as well. So yeah, please, any views and any feedback is gratefully received there. But yeah, other than that, if you want to get in touch, please put comments down. But yeah, I just want to thank the co-hosts for today for their time as always. And yeah, please come back next week where we will talk more what ifs. And yeah, we will see you on the next. Let's see what's out there. So
justice for Norton.
Justice for Norton, indeed. Bye for now.